Now, the Dean of Faculty of Management Sciences at the Durban University of Technology, Professor Fulufhelo Netswera, writes an expressive letter detailing what he would say to President Cyril Ramaphosa and the ANC NEC if he had the opportunity. In the scathing letter published in the Daily Maverick, Netswera details the party's continued failure to deliver on promises made at the dawn of democracy, saying they have set back Black lives and generations by at least 100 years. He also outlines other issues such as failure to address corruption, fruitless commissions, and the staggering unemployment rate, among others. He joins us now to tell us more. Prof, a very good morning to you, and thank you so much for your time and joining us today. So, like I mentioned, you wrote a very scathing letter that you had wished to express to the ANC NEC. In fact, they are meeting over the next couple of days in order to convene a very special gathering with regards to fixing up our municipalities. But you describe them as a gathering of thieves and criminals. What specific actions would you attribute these failures of the NEC in exemplifying this particular perception? And how do you believe this impacts on the governance of our country?
Yes, good morning to you, Katleho and the team. I think it's important to indicate that we speak because we are concerned, but more importantly, because we care. We don't want to migrate like other citizens who choose to run away and go and live in other countries where things are running smoothly. But there are so many telltales, you know, if you look around of the state of collapse of our country at both national and local government. It is very visible. And I can really pinpoint areas where we are failing dismally. We are nearing a state where we have no country left, really. We have got very little left. We inspire no confidence at all. And I hope when they do sit, they will take concrete actions. They failed to take concrete actions over the last 30 years, and hopefully there will be a turnaround. If not, well, we can only wish that they will get out of the way and we get people who are able, willing, and ready to run the country perfectly.
Prof, I mean, you mentioned that many of these leaders continue to what you frame as talk in revolutionary tongues, and they blame apartheid for the current issues. How fair is it for us not to refer to the great impact of apartheid in what we are seeing in some of the structural things that apartheid has developed and left within our country? Where do we start drawing the line, and how do you think this narrative hampers progress, and what alternative narrative do you believe would foster a genuine development going forward?
Perhaps the most important question to ask is when you emerge out of a state of apartheid, how many years do you give yourself to correct the wrongs? Do you go on for the next 100 years blaming apartheid for everything that is happening? Can we attribute the current unemployment rates to the state of apartheid? Can we attribute the poor education that we dish to our kids? You know that performance of our kids at primary school comparative to other countries is one of the worst. Can we attribute that to apartheid? Can we attribute to apartheid the dismal state of our cities? I don't think we should. And I think had we taken things forward, giving ourselves tangible targets to improve the state of affairs, since 1994, would be by now very, very far. And unfortunately, we are not there. So, as I said, I think apartheid should not be in our DNA. We should read about it in the books of history, but we should not perpetuate the narrative that everything should be attributable to apartheid.
Can you pinpoint exactly where you believe we went wrong as a country for us to be experiencing the current deterioration?
I would want to give you at least two factors. One is meritocracy. I think the ANC abandoned the interest to appoint the most capable people in its body politic. So if you analyze all those people who are sitting at the NEC there, it's mainly people who can sing and dance and talk rhetoric than people who can deliver. So there are no credible people who are running our institutions and who are running the body politic of this country. Majority of them don't even know what they are doing, why they are there. Number two, besides meritocracy, I think there is a question of corruption. Majority of them have forgotten that they are there to serve and not to be served. So the first thing they do when the president appoints them to become ministers, they think about the car that they must buy. Should I get a Mercedes-Benz or BMW for myself and for the entourage, the blue light as we call them? Those are their priorities. They are not thinking about what impact can I make significantly to change the lives of South Africans? And that is where they're getting it wrong. I just want to pinpoint those 2 points, but there are many, many more.
And on the point of corruption, Prof, I mean, corruption also has a two-way street. There's an enabler within that. How important is it for us to also identify other factors within the society that allow for corruption to continue in the way that it has, especially where you do find, like you say, where people within the ANC would occupy certain positions, would have influence over certain municipalities, but it's not only on one end.
Yes, and I think that is the narrative that they often tend to churn out. They think we, society, are corrupting them. They should lead. They should take action. Take, for argument's sake, if President Cyril Ramaphosa was to take one of his senior ministers, one or two, and this is what the Chinese do, by the way, one or two, and take them to prison. And then you find a senior minister of parliament is arrested and jailed. I can tell you with confidence that the junior officials in the municipality would think about corruption and run away. They would never perpetuate the state of corruption. But now they know that they can get away with corruption because everybody is corrupt anyway. So I think we need to set example. But government must lead. Now and again, I think at the senior level in government, the president and parliament itself must sacrifice one or two of its senior members to show direction.
I think one other thing that stood out for me in your piece, Prof, is where you mentioned that those who lived in the homeland system now believe that those crony little states given life by apartheid performed far better than your municipalities today. And you go on to even speak about how they've destroyed the works and the work ethic that was inherited from Lucas Mangope, Patrick Pepu, as well as Chikedi Sibe. And really, especially if you look at the Northwest and what Lucas Mangope had created in terms of infrastructure and some of those economic nodes over time, what's your take in terms of how that particular province has deteriorated over the years?
And I think the counter-narrative you will get is that once you start talking in those terms, you are glorifying apartheid and the Bantustan system. We are not doing that. To the contrary, we are saying you should have shown that you can perform much better than the apartheid system. And when you start talking to individuals who indeed lived during those days under those small states, majority by far will tell you that the roads were better. We had water. There was no unemployment. There was no dependency. They didn't even receive grants, but they lived well and they were somewhat self-reliant to a large degree. Today, everybody's sitting down and is looking to government to give them tenders, to give them social grants. People cannot even go and plant maize to feed themselves because they are looking to government. I think we have gotten something very, very wrong. But when you go to Mahikeng, when you go to Bizana, when you go to Thohoyandou, you can see that these small towns, by far, have been left to dereliction. Nobody who wants to invest will look to go and put their money in those small towns because they know, for argument's sake, that Clover, the dairy company, left Northwest in Lichtenberg because they say, well, you don't give us water, you have got no roads, we can't transport our product, and they ran away. And that is one simple example, but there are many more similar to those.
But is it really all doom and gloom, Prof? I mean, yesterday we were listening to the president as he was addressing the NEC, and he said, in actual fact, the ANC government has really done a lot. They've electrified, they've built houses, they've built roads. Children are now have access to schooling as well as to tertiary education. And some also argue that the apartheid government had a smaller base to service as opposed to what the democratic dispensation is now giving. Is it really all doom and gloom?
Well, there are so many excuses to give. There is so little progress made. In actual fact, we have regressed. I think if you go and look at all indicators, and there are many indicators of development, you can look at them. They are out there for everybody to see. Whether you are looking at inequality, which is the highest in the world, whether you are looking at unemployment, youth unemployment, which is 60% plus, and it's the highest in the world. Whether you are looking at crime and criminality, South Africa's towns are classified as a criminal capital of the world. This is where murder and robbery happens. So all indicators depict a state of gloom. But I'm saying yes, going forward, provided we take concrete actions and we are serious about it, we can turn the tide. But we cannot turn the tide, as Judge Raymond Zondo puts it, after putting together a commission, spend R1 billion, you go and ask me to swear in people that have been pointed in the commission as criminals, and you say, go and swear them in and make them members of parliament. That is not turning the corner. That is perpetuating the status quo and even making things worse.
I mean, Prof, your piece is quite critical, yet you also call for urgent action. What signs of hope or positive change do you see in South Africa's political landscape?
Well, I'm not so confident, given the current leadership, that we will make change. Whenever ANC sits, they talk about positive change, whether they're talking about lifestyle audits, they repeat themselves over and over again. Just this past week on the 8th, President Ramaphosa wrote from his desk, he regularly writes from his desk, that corruption has become a pandemic and we must nip it on the bud, so to say. But this is what the ANC does. They speak the rhetoric, but they don't walk the talk. So ANC talks against corruption all the time. There is no lack of speeches against corruption from the ANC, but they don't act against it. So what I'm saying is that I'm not confident that the ANC is able to act against corruption. Because many among them are very corrupt. But also going forward, because the ANC is failing, I think the baton has to be passed to individuals who are able to do the work. Whether they will emerge from a revamped ANC or they will emerge from other parties, but I think we need to prioritize South Africa. There are very practical examples of what we can do to make South Africa work. South Africa has got immense potential, both in terms of skills, in terms of resources, whether we're talking mineral and land. South Africa can become a first world country indeed.
And speaking of those practical examples, I mean, you also make mention and advocate for militarization and discipline of our youth, particularly in townships. How are you seeing the contribution of young people, particularly in how they're experiencing the country now and what it is that they have to offer for the future?
I actually wrote a piece on the conscription of the youth, which I published some 2 years or so ago. And I did this because I was extremely concerned. Those who live in the township, they will know. When you walk around in the townships, you will meet this group of young people, especially male young people. They are like zombies. They walk around, they are smoking nyaupe, they don't bath, they don't go to their families anymore, and I would assume they are involved in criminality. And this has become a norm. In the villages, young people, all they do is wake up and go and drink. They do nothing else except wake up and go and drink. And what do we say to this youth? This is lost generation, a lost generation. They will never contribute positively to the economy of this country. But what are we saying? Are we saying we should leave things as they are? Can we turn things around? I've looked at conscription in other countries, and there are practical examples. In China, for argument's sake, the military there is responsible for social programs. I mean, we talk about lack of housing in South Africa. If you take majority of these youth and you put them in the military, you discipline them, but moreover, you give them skills. Can't they be responsible for building their homes and houses that we are running short of? Can't they be responsible for installing the pipes and we make sure everybody get the water? Can't we stop wasting money in tenders and use the very people to take over some of these responsibilities? I think it's highly done. It can easily be done. But do we have the will, or do we want to make money as individuals through big tenders and go and stash these monies in Panama and everywhere else? So this is a very big question, and we must confront it.
Certainly. Prof, thank you so much for your time. This has been very insightful, and I certainly do hope that such pieces will motivate many of us to be able to stand up, even within our little communities, and try to effect that change, because to look up to the Messiah to save us one day certainly doesn't seem like we will find ourselves out of the woods. Prof, thank you so much for your time.